Hi everyone, thanks for hopping on. So just a few things before we get started. The ideas that I presented last week were just the bare bones, sparks of ideas. They aren't the plan, they're just ideas to spark a conversation, to see what ideas villagers had about what might work and what might not work, and to see if there was sufficient interest at all to continue exploring ideas. I'm talking, of course, specifically about ideas related to the baboon harmony game, where we took a color and paired it with the idea that baboons would never find food paired with that color. Ideas. And I also want to just say a disclaimer before we start. There is no baboon harmony group. There is no baboon harmony team. There's just me, a little individual homeowner who said something like, "Hey, if you'd like, come and meet me in a Zoom room. I've got some unusual ideas I'd be happy to share." And then there's some villagers who agreed to listen and who so far seem to think it might be worth discussing further. I also want to thank Claire and Stephen Mullins for their comprehensive look at some of the issues. And if you haven't had a look at it, I'd encourage you to do exactly that. I've pulled out a few quotes in particular from that document that I want to go over with you. The first one is, "We think it's important for us to also think about what could go wrong, how we would handle it, and what actions we take to guard against harmful unintended consequences. We really should be mindful about falling into groupthink and should be comfortable reflecting on discussions and decisions from a devil's advocate perspective." And to that I can only say yes, yes, and absolutely yes. Then continuing on some of the additional thoughts. "It's okay if we're unsuccessful in achieving desired outcomes as long as we're learning something which enables us to take a better action, make better decisions, or adds to our body of knowledge." Yes, of course, I agree. "Learning something quickly and cheaply is better, so focus on solving small, self-contained, describable, and measurable problems rather than unwieldy, overarching issues." Couldn't agree more. "It's better to stop doing something which is not working as early as possible." Yes, and on that note, if there aren't enough people who think this might work, then there's no reason to continue. "Deciding not to do something is sometimes the best course of action." Yes, if we determine that this isn't going to work, then we stop it. "Not every problem can or should be solved by the baboon harmony group." Absolutely, and as I said, just to reiterate, there is no baboon harmony group. There is no baboon harmony team. This is just us throwing some ideas together specifically around, can we shape baboons' behavior? So, for example, a yellow bag or any other color bag, they learn that there is no food in there. I also went back and looked at the baboon survey of 2021. And what they say is that in comparison to the 2001 and 2018 surveys, the results of those questions that are comparable reflect similar values, with all three surveys showing strong support for nature, wildlife, and coexistence with baboons. However, whereas the 2018 results reflected an increase in understanding of coexistence from 2001, the 2021 survey shows some regression towards the 2001 data, reflecting the need for increased awareness building of how we can coexist. And that's exactly what I think we're trying to achieve with these meetings. So in Stephen and Claire's document, I just tweaked one sentence. "Roy Else belongs to its wild inhabitants as much as to its human ones. We're all part of one community and one ecosystem." And in that 2021 survey, one of the questions was, the baboon situation is out of control, and should we have calls for new solutions and controls? Now, 35% of people strongly disagreed, and 24% of people strongly agreed with that statement. And I think that this is where we need to do some of the work with hardened attitudes on either sides. It's almost like if we could get those to soften a bit and meet somewhere in the middle, we would have a much better community and be able to protect all of our beautiful wildlife and our ecosystem. Today's meeting, I specifically wanted to look at what it's like to run a food-related business in Royals with the baboons. And so Peter from the Drummond Arms has agreed that he will pop on and that I can interview him. but I don't see him yet. So in the meantime, maybe I can ask you what you think it might be like to run a food-related business.
You know, so yeah, I used to be in the food business. We ran a guest house and youth camp for many years. And I would hate to try and do that here with the challenges of not being able to go outside and put waste out, or all sorts of things, baboons sneaking in and stealing stuff. When you've calculated your food costs, when you've got your portions sorted out, and something comes in and swipes half of it, I think it must be a nightmare. I haven't spoken to anybody really in detail, but that's certainly my perspective. I would hate to have had that problem when I was working with food.
Yeah,
Thanks,
it's almost
Carrie.
like you've got enough other problems just running a business without having to take something like baboons into account. Yeah, thank you for those, Steph. Anyone else got their thoughts? Maybe you haven't run a food business, but you've also got some ideas about what it must be like. Guys says, I have huge sympathy for the restaurant owners. Steph has summed up my opinion. I think it must impact hugely on their clients as well. Yeah. I mean, what would it be like for you if you went to a place, you knew nothing about whatever animal it was, and the next thing, you were sitting down with some friends and you were confronted with something that you didn't know that was maybe scary?
Carrie, this is Stephen. I think that I agree it must be difficult, but I also think that when you're coming into a biosphere, you're buying into a set of principles. You're coming in here and you're agreeing that you're not going to grow fruit trees, and you're understanding that you're living in harmony with nature. So I think that if you're starting a restaurant in this area, you're signing up to that, and maybe the extent of the baboon problem isn't quite as it's worse than you expected, but it's part and parcel of what you get living in Royales. It's if you don't know that there's baboons in Royales and it comes as a surprise to you, I'm sorry, but that's on you, because you're coming into a biosphere area. And you should be buying into these principles, and you should be adjusting your behavior to adjust to these principles that the village should be abiding by, from my perspective.
Thank you, Stephen. I really appreciate having many different views on this, because, that's how we get to understand where everybody comes from with their ideas and how they meet and sometimes don't meet. I also wonder about, the buying process. I was noticing on the 2021 survey, for example, that there were a couple of people who absolutely did not know about the baboons beforehand. And so I wonder, if I'm going into a town that I don't know, do I know that it's a biosphere even? Is there a realtor who's actually saying, by the way, do you realize that this is a biosphere? You can't grow fruit trees, you can't do this, you're going to have to keep your doors and windows closed. I don't know. I don't know how much people know and how much real estate agents actually tell people. So, some people will research a town before they go there. Others might not. So, but it shows us a gap maybe that is worthwhile looking at. So thank you for that. Maggie says it would be absolutely terrifying, especially for children. Yeah, I think that's probably true. And I think there have been some incidences of people saying, their grandchildren won't come to Royales because they're terrified of the baboons. And I find that sad. I wonder if there isn't a way we could bridge that gap and help with that process. Is there a way that we could introduce children to baboons and have a different experience? I don't know. I mean, if anyone's got ideas, I think that would be very valuable. What other ideas do people have?
Look,
I
I
was
think
also,
maybe it's from my perspective. I think the there's those points are very valid, and I think it's maybe an education thing. And I think that there are warning signs and things like that, but it's trying to warn people that this is the reality of coming into Royals, and that you have to be aware of these things, and that if you have food, it might be stolen, and if you have a bag, you need to have it securely because it might be stolen, because these are the realities of where we're living. For me, it's like if you went and moved to the Kruger National Park and then and then you complained about the fact that you've got lions and elephants outside your door. It's toned down, but it's the
I think Stephen suddenly went mute. Stephen, maybe you hit the mute button.
sorry, yeah, I had finished. I'm not sure if there was what part of it got lost. Sorry.
Yeah, and I think those are valid points. And I think, up until now, we maybe haven't had that big baboon sign up, which Overstrand put up, I think it was last week. So hopefully, that would make a difference, in warning people. The other thing, of course, about comparing us with the nature reserve is that in a nature reserve, if you're staying in a camp, it's usually fenced off from most of the actual game itself. And so living in a conservancy, it's a little bit different from that point of view. Okay, I see that Peter is on. Peter, can I ask you to unmute yourself? Okay, there we go. So what I want to do with Peter is do what is known as an outsider witness interview. And I want to set it up in a very particular way. So let me tell you what I'm going to ask you to do.
Yeah.
Okay, because the object of today's meeting really is to gain a greater understanding about the baboon-related challenges, especially in the CBD. I want us all to recognize that it takes courage, and it's an act of bravery, really, to open up yourself and be interviewed in a group like this. So I want to create a sacred space. I want everybody to listen with an open heart and mind, with kind, non-judgmental, and non-critical ears. I mean, I understand the human tendency to think how others could just have done this differently or just has done that. So for example, well, if you just did X or if you just did Y, you wouldn't have this problem. But I'm asking you to just be with him, just to put yourself in his shoes and try and understand his perspective as if this were your livelihood. So in other words, I want us to open a sacred space of kindness. Your role in all of this is I want you to write down things, preferably the actual words Peter says, that make you feel more connected to him and his story, that remind you of any parts of your own story, for anything that he says that leaves you feeling inspired, for anything that surprises you that you didn't know, for anything that maybe leaves you feeling more hopeful, for anything that creates a spark of a creative idea or thought, for anything he says that reminds you of a positive thought or memory about Royals. Okay, so Peter, I wanted to ask you, when did you buy in Royals, the drum and arms?
No, you got the wrong Peter.
Oh, I have?
Yeah, I'm not the Drummond Peter. I'm
Xander's. Okay, for some reason, I thought you were the Drummond Peter.
No, I'm Xander's Peter.
Well, that just shows you what I know. Okay, well then let's just continue with our actual conversation. So who does own the Drummond then?
Sorry, just repeat that.
Does anyone know who owns the Drummond?
The Drummond is not owned by a resident. Okay. It is owned by somebody else. Peter is the manager there.
Another Peter.
Yeah, another Peter. Yeah.
But Peter, then what I'm going to do is just I'm going to interview you as just a resident, if that's okay with you, and then I will try and get hold of someone in the food related business who would be prepared to be interviewed, because I do think that it would be a really interesting conversation.
Yeah, let's see what.
Sure. Yeah. So Peter, when did you buy in Royals?
We bought about 18 months ago
Mm-hmm.
and moved in about a year ago.
Okay. And before you bought, did you know about the baboons?
Yes, we did. We were quite aware of it.
Okay.
Um,
And what made you buy in Royals?
many things. No, I guess I absolutely love the vibe of the village, and Zandra as well. We looked a lot in Pringle. We were actually looking at Pringle, and then a place became available in Royals, and we had a look here, and we loved the place. We loved the nature. We loved the quietness. We loved the entire vibe of it. And so we were looking in Pretoria all the time on Property 24, and boom, this place came up, and it was just perfect for us. We are an empty nest, so it's just the two of us.
Okay.
And this place just fits our needs perfectly. So
okay. So what is it that you still love about Royals 18 months later?
well, just more than I bargained for. It's just a lot more than that I thought it would be. Everything that I thought it would plus. And you have to stay here. And look, to be honest, if you come from the Transvaal like I do, and I am also a hunter, and I know a lot of farmers, and I know many people here, and I've discussed this with them, arrive here with murderous thoughts towards the baboons. I mean, they will not come onto my property, blah, blah, blah. But when we arrived here, we were met by Gavin Lundy, and Gavin sort of introduced me to the baboons. And it takes time. It takes a few weeks, and then you get to know these baboons are not aggressive. They are just opportunistic, and it's up to you to just keep them out of your house. And for the rest, and it's up to you to not walk around with food, to check your garbage, all of that. And then, we have the further complication of having two little dogs that go crazy when the baboons come. And that situation has sorted itself as well, because I was very scared in the beginning that a baboon will devour my children. And it just didn't happen. And it happened more than once that they were outside when the baboons came in, and the baboons just absolutely ignore them. They don't like the barking, so they tend to just avoid it.
Yeah.
But there's zero aggression. We've had 2 invasions by the big guy, and he just, he listens when you tell him to just go out. And as long as there's an escape route, there's no problem. So you quickly warm up to the baboons. That is the fact of the matter. So, and from my viewpoint, it's just a question of education and having a bit of experience with it. But having a food-related business in the CBD is quite a different challenge, because the patrons are most of the time not locals, and I think that is the major problem. It is manageable to keep the baboons out of your shop and out of your kitchen, and that is mostly up to you. But the uneducated patrons are, in my view, the biggest problem. And you cannot educate the entire Western Cape.
And the entire South Africa, the entire world.
Yeah, for that matter. So we would have to be very innovative in doing something there that is immediately visible from the moment you turn into Royals.
Yeah.
The patrons need to know there's a problem here, and you better be vigilant. That's all.
Okay. So in other words, if there was something very visible that people immediately knew,
Yes.
it would go one step towards educating people.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I personally like the we love our baboons idea, because in the suburb we stayed in, Pretoria, there was lots of signs that said we love our children, drive slowly, and that sort of strikes a note with people. To be watch out for these horrible baboons is not, in my view, the right way to go on any side. It is, we love our baboons, be careful.
Okay. So can you tell me about any fun antics that you've seen going on with the baboons? Anything that's
Yes, a long list. I mean, I do chase them off my back porch with just waving a catapult at them. And they know me so well by now. If they see me coming out, they run to the neighbors and they get on the chimney, and then you can see nothing. And 30 seconds later, you will see a nose coming out from behind the chimney to check if I'm still here. And, I mean, they play my car they use as a jungle gym, and no damage to date, fortunately. And of course, like everyone else, the little ones is just a treat. And especially in the restaurant, and I think at something else, there's you can see through the windows how they play across the street, and people love that. Yeah. I think people come here for that.
So in other words, if we could find a way where we could still enjoy all their antics, but
yes,
we had ways of keeping them out of the businesses and, keeping them away from human food, would that be something that was valuable?
That would, of course, be valuable. And everyone knows the core of this problem is that baboons lose their fear of humans. And that emboldens them to go and grab something out of somebody's hand. And we have to find a way to make them wary of us without causing injury or death. Somewhere, like this initiative you're busy with, somewhere there needs to be an idea that says, look, humans are not my friends. They won't harm me, but I better watch out for them. That kind of thing. And conditioning with the colors and the paper and the stuff, I think it's a very good start in that direction. But we all have to realize that the less they fear us, the more our problems will be. And it's not impossible, in my view, for baboons to forage in my garden and to play in my garden, but keep clear of me and keep clear of my kitchen. So in my view, the ideal circumstance is if I stand up and open the door, they run away. And I have never heard harmed a baboon. But they know by my demeanor, don't.
Okay. So when Gavin came and did some education with you and Zandra, what was the most valuable thing that you got from that interaction? How did that help you?
Well, number one, I think the situation with the little dogs. I mean, Gavin made a point of it that as long as the dogs do not get to a baby or hurt a baby, but even so, if the dogs would storm them, the big baboon would probably just slap them away. He's unaware of an incident where a baboon attacked and killed or hurt a dog. And I have not been able to find a story like that or evidence of that. So that's the first thing that sort of calmed me down. And the fact that baboons are not aggressive towards people. And when the troop was in the street here, he came to fetch me and took me outside and to sort of introduce me to them. And I had a chat to a few of them. I saw that there's no natural aggression from a baboon towards a human. And that was very valuable to me. And then, of course, the serious warnings that do not corner the baboon in your house. Give him an escape route. Don't panic, don't shout, don't scream, don't throw things at him, because in the first place, he'll mess up your house. And in the second place, this is where you might find some aggression, is if the baboon sees no way out. And the only way out for him is to get over you, to get past you. Then you might get hurt. Not even intentionally, but you'll just run over you.
Yeah.
Those kinds of things stuck with me, and in time, Gavin proved to be absolutely right.
So let me play devil's advocate with you, if you don't mind. You have these two ideas that seem opposite to each other. The one is that baboons need to fear us, but the other one is that if Gavin has helped me befriend them. And so I'm kind of wondering about those two ideas.
No, I don't think there's a dichotomy. I think Gavin didn't help me to befriend the baboons. He took me in their midst to show me that there's no natural aggression from the baboons towards humans. I firmly believe that however nice it would have been, we cannot afford familiarity breeds contempt. That is a problem. It's a very difficult problem. We find it in our workplaces where we love to be friends with people that report to you, or if you're in a management position, but you can't. It's not conducive to a good corporate environment. And being too close and friendly with the baboons will not be conducive to a peaceful coexistence.
Okay, so you did say, though, let me just see if I can find this, that I even spoke to some of them. So I'm curious. Did I thought I heard you say that.
I did. I said hello.
So I'm wondering how that isn't befriending them.
That is testing their level of aggression. That is to see how do they react to me if I put out my arm to them, and if I talk to them and walk closer to them, and there was no reaction. And I wouldn't do that with a leopard.
Okay. But is there anything else you want to add before I interview everybody else? Okay.
No, you're welcome.
Okay, thank you. So if you can all just switch on your cameras, those of you who are comfortable with it. And again, I want to ask, what did you hear that gave you some hope? Were there any ideas that came forward that felt like, gosh, there's a creative spark of something that we could maybe investigate or build on further? Was there anything that made you feel connected to Peter's story? So all of the things that I asked you before. So
I want to say, I loved everything you had to say, Peter, and a lot of it really resonated with me. Love Royales. Baboons were one of the main reasons why we wanted to move here. The story is, first time we ever came here was last September, turned into Porter Drive. There were baboons playing in the roads. I want to live here. So it was amazing. I would also love to get more information from Gavin. I would like to get to know them better. I would like to be able to differentiate them. I would like to understand about their lives. But I agree with you that we cannot get too close, and trying to make them reliant or friends with us is going to be counterproductive and probably harmful to them.
So what have been some of the fun things, Claire, that you've experienced watching them?
We've also got dogs, so they don't hang around here very much. So we usually hear the racket and move on quite quickly, but every now and again you'll get the whole troop coming around, the little babies playing around, the sunbathing, the rolling over. There's a little dog across the road and they play with him. They chase him up and down the street and he chases them up and down the street. They seem to be friends with each other. And it's just when I see them coming, if the dogs are out, I feel a little tense still, not because of the baboons, because of my dogs. But otherwise, when I see them coming, I feel a great sense of peace and privilege.
So I have to tell you this, just listening to your story about the little ones. Behind us, we have a house that used to have a swimming pool. It's been, I don't think anyone's been there for 10 years, I'm sure. But the baboons used to all line up on the roof ridge, the little ones, and the moms would push the little baboons and they'd all roll down, do little bolomakissis into the pool. Then they'd be up again, up the roof. And I mean, we used to spend hours watching their antics. So Claire, what are your thoughts about baboons still need to have some fear of us?
I don't know if it's fear. I think it's healthy wariness, as Peter mentioned.
Healthy wariness.
I don't want to instill fear. I think they're smart and clever enough to know that we are not their friends. And when they take something from us, it's actually them having a condescending attitude towards us because they feel that we're lower in the pecking order than they are. So for me, it's more about a healthy mutual respect.
I love that. So a healthy wariness and a healthy mutual respect. So if we could engender those things, do you think that would be valuable?
I do, and I have to say, I haven't seen anything to the contrary in the short amount of time that I've been here from the villagers or the baboons. I've seen a dog off leash attack the troop.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else want to say anything about Peter's story or piggyback onto Claire's ideas and Claire's experiences? I mean, what about people who genuinely fear the baboons? You know, I'm sure there are people that are very wary of them, maybe because they've had an unfortunate experience. Is there anyone that feels, you know, I'm actually scared of them? Because I will tell you, we had the big guy who walked past two huge males at the barbecue down and took a bowl of potato salad and broke it on the floor and sat there eating it. And I had 7 women in the kitchen. We were all preparing for a barbecue. And I will tell you that it was actually quite alarming for me how scared everybody else was. Yes, they aren't regular Roy Elses, but wow, the shrieking and the screaming and the, you know, it was terrifying for me to witness how terrified everybody else was. And I certainly didn't know how to stop the situation. And I was lucky that Gavin happened to be walking past, heard the shouting and came in and showed us exactly how to move the baboon out. You know, I'm trying to get everyone to close the doors so we can go out one area, not realizing that they go out the same area they came in. And so, you know, he did a little education with us, and I have to say it was enormously valuable. And so, you know, we rent our house now. I've had Gavin go in and talk to the tenants when they've moved in, because I think we do have these resources, people that have lots of experience that can maybe reduce the fear. And I know that our first tenant said to me afterwards, because I checked in, you know, how was it? And she said, you know, I was very fearful for our 5-year-old daughter. And having spoken to him, I found that that fear had reduced a lot. So I'm just curious, you know, what other fearful experiences have people had?
Well, let me tell you, I'm not scared easily, and but when the big guy came in the other day, he was very unexpected and very fast, and even I felt a tinge of fear when he bared his teeth at me and started hissing. You know,
yeah.
I think there are people that could be traumatized by that, and you have to experience an incident like that to understand that that is not aggression. That is him showing fear.
Yeah.
And just get out of his way.
Mm.
But I'm afraid, I've been following the conversation now, and I'm afraid there might be, we need to be realistic about this. If we do nothing, a scared person is going to hurt a baboon at some point.
Mm.
And or somebody's going to corner a baboon, and the baboon's going to hurt somebody.
Mm.
We need to search within ourselves and think, how far will we go to install a healthy respect for us with the baboons before it becomes ugly?
Mm.
That is, to me, the million-dollar question. And in my mind, shooting at the baboon with a catapult, not hitting him, just shooting at him, even a taser, is non-lethal, less invasive methods of instilling respect.
Mm.
It might sound horrible, but it's probably in the interest of the baboon. We have to think out of the box in these terms, and that is just my view.
Thanks, Peter. Would anyone else like to comment on that? Because I know people will have very strong feelings about anything that hurts, inconveniences, that even instills psychological fear in baboons.
Can I just add something, Carrie? I don't know.
Yes,
Can you hear
yes.
me?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, just to go back on, Peter just mentioned, a baboon could get hurt, but by the same token, I think a person could probably more easily get hurt at the way the situation's at the moment.
Mm.
And I love having the baboons in our village. I love seeing them around, but I don't like them too near my house because my dogs, I'm sure as Claire knows, because I'm sure she hears them bark all the time. They go berserk when baboons are around. But I'm thinking of an incident like Mary Comrie, who we all know is a smallish lady who's been literally knocked over twice, walking back from the shop carrying an item.
Mm.
And yes, we can say she should have known better, but the point is that I think the problem, what for me is maybe one of the biggest fears is too strong a word, but worry about the whole thing is that somebody might just get hurt quite badly, like an older person get pushed over and break a hip, or whatever. On Friday we had an incident that there was a group 3 students from Stellenbosch, a PhD student, a foreign girl, I think she might have been German, and they were walking in Lovers Walk, and the baboon literally ripped the backpack off her back. And she had 2 men next to her. So, and I think that should be maybe these incidents are the issues that we should really be worrying about or discussing, not so much about do we mind having them around. I think most people in Wales do love having them around. I think we are incredibly privileged, but it's these incidents that seem to be increasing. So we've been here 5 years, almost 5 years, and when we first came, there were never any incidents like that we've heard of.
Yeah.
So there's definitely has been a yeah, and I mean, by the same token, you can say one is hearing more and more about elephants attacking cars in Kruger or whatever. You can go into a whole sort of the universe is clamping down, whatever you want to say. But I think I think those individuals sort of incidents where the interaction is too close, too physical and too close, and like children being traumatized, grandchildren, that's sad. I mean, we live here and we want our grandchildren to be happy here. So anyway, that's just my penny's worth.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And Steph, if I can just tack on to what you're saying, our family's been coming to Wales for 35 years. And for the vast majority of that time, I remember being able to have braais on the patio without bars. I don't ever remember walking back from the shop with a bag that was taken from me. I don't remember any of those things. Now, it's possible that maybe I wasn't there often enough to hear about incidences. But I don't remember ever having a car door tried until very recently. And fortunately, we haven't had any car doors broken, but there certainly seems to be
can I, sorry, to interrupt you, just because it's a funny bit of fact. We had our bakkie, the inside of our bakkie, absolutely trashed, over 6,000 rands worth of damage by a baboon that opened the door blew closed, and he couldn't get out.
Oh, shame. Wow.
So,
yeah.
Thank goodness for good insurance, which we should all have. But and that wasn't the problem. That was just, I'm just telling that as a fun story. It wasn't fun at the time, but it's okay. Yeah.
And so I think there are these incidences that are disturbing. I mean, this last week we assume, and I'm going to say assume because we really don't know, that a baboon had actually sort of broken through, torn, eaten, I don't know, part of a garage door. Now, I don't know whether that's humans or whether it's baboons, but it's a possibility that it's baboons. And so, you know, there's this kind of uncomfortable feeling. It feels to me like these incidences are getting a little worse and a little bit more frequent. But I could be wrong. When I spoke to Kim about this plan a few months ago, was it? You know, he was saying that there's certainly anecdotal evidence in Betty's Bay that the Betty's Bay baboons 30 years ago were breaking into cars and snatching things from people. But I've never experienced that in Roy Else. Okay, does anyone else want to hop into the conversation and give us some of their thoughts?
Laurie, maybe I can just, you know, in defense of my views, I had friends in the Kruger Park that were personnel there. And I stayed with them often. And they are outside of the camps. And so we could travel around at will. And they had a lot of innovative ways to do this kind of thing. They stuff tomatoes with Tabasco. They have things that make loud noises where they scare off the baboons. They put up very serious electrical fences at places with what they consider to be valuable. And these electric fences are not like the commercial ones we have here. They are near deadly. So anything short of causing permanent injury or permanent harm to the baboons must, in my view, be considered at least, because the next step is people are going to start demanding that these baboons be killed or removed. So it's, in my view, education both ways. The baboons need to be educated that humans can be dangerous and it's better to stay away from them. And the people need to understand Gavin's message. Okay, that's it.
Thank you. Anybody else want to throw anything into the conversation? Okay. Peter, just coming back to your story and your ideas, which, you know, I think it's really valuable that we have an open forum where we can discuss our fears openly and where we aren't tagged as being silly or, you know, because I think that unless we feel deeply heard by each other, the bridge between the gap will never be bridged. But I think that if we can hear each other's fears and hear each other's thoughts without immediately saying, you know, no baboon can ever be inconvenienced, no human can ever be inconvenienced, you know, maybe there's a path forward to consider these kinds of conversations. But your overall feelings in listening to some of the other stories is, Do you think that this is a helpful process for Royals, just to continue to have these conversations and to maybe, start talking to some business owners? Because I will now try and get the right Peter.
Yes.
Or maybe not him, but maybe Johan from Gossips, or maybe LB from something else. Because I do think that business concerns have, they have unique challenges that maybe as a village, if we understand them better, we'll also come up with creative ideas. But if you hear what everybody said, would you say that this is a worthwhile process? Just having these conversations, coming up with creative ideas is worthwhile having?
It's far better than what's going on the WhatsApp groups.
Okay.
I think people fear to speak because there are on both ends of the spectrum. On the one hand, people that just want to get rid of the baboons, and on the other hand, people that want to be too close to the baboons.
Right.
And as we all know, the answer is somewhere in the middle. But it has become a scary thing to do, to say anything on any of these groups. So, and I'm really not pointing fingers at anyone specifically. It's just a matter of fact that it's a volatile subject. And this way of doing it appears to me to be far more valuable than that.
Thank you, Peter. Christopher, can I ask you, what's your impression of today's discussion? Does it hold any value? Is there any reason that we should continue? And after this, we're going to talk a little bit about the yellow bag idea as well. But just having these conversations, do you think there's any value in it, any worth continuing them?
Can you hear me all?
Yes.
Good. Yeah, Kari, I certainly see value in it. Otherwise, I wouldn't join the call which you did set up. And so far, this you can take as a confirmation as that. I would like to say I'm quite new in the village, only since November. And we have been introduced by my brother-in-law already a couple of years and have been aware of the baboon issue quite well. In particular, in the sense of Achim's view, which is very positive on baboons, as you certainly all know. And this is also our stance to baboons. We have them quite often here around the house. I'm totally relaxed about them. I'm sitting on the terrace without eatings around, of course, and they are strolling through the garden. It happened this afternoon, and insofar I'm a great lover of the baboons. On the other hand, if behavior of baboons really should change, then this might be something to consider in order to make sure that people, as it has been described, do not get into danger because they are sticking to the rules to not have eatings in their bags, and however they get being attacked because the baboons are thinking that something eatable might be in the bags. This is something which you should pick up with your color ID of the bags, which you introduced last time probably. And on top of that, I would recommend, but this is probably not a new thought because Achim's work and your work as well might have already covered that we have various alleys of communication. One is towards the residents, which are here in the village, which are aware of the discussion. The other ones is the visitors, which is an alley of communication. Other ones are the ones who rent houses here, have to be made aware of it. Another group are the workers of renovations, a situation which I experience right now. And another alley might probably be also media driven to already introduce a positive tone story on communication channels like TripAdvisor and Booking.com, so that people already at that early stage know if I go ahead with looking for something to live in Royals for holidays or whatever, I have to consider that there are baboons around, so that the gap between expectation and real life experience is then closened by that way. And so far, I do not want to eat too much of the audience time by my telling, because I assume it's already known. And so far, I'm positive on your approach. Keep me in the loop, considering that I'm a new resident and that Barbara and I will not be permanent residents, which might give a different involvement by this constraint.
Thank you very much, Christopher. And, you know, I love some of your ideas that you've inserted into that conversation that I think are worthwhile fleshing out regarding renting of houses, for example. So thank you for that. Maggie, can I ask you, how's this conversation been for you? Is it anything that's worthwhile considering continuing?
Okay.
There we go.
Well, I think I actually have been thinking about your ideas all week. I've been discussing it with my family. And from a personal level, I think it's absolutely brilliant. And I think the sooner we start on it, the better. There's absolutely nothing to lose on any level. You know, if we just give it a go, and if it doesn't work or it needs tweaking, then at least we've kind of had a go, maybe made some progress. Maybe if we alter things, it'll be more successful. But I think we've got to kind of actually start the process. I mean, for instance, the example with the student with the backpack who had it pulled off her back, perhaps if this had happened maybe in 9 months' time after we've initiated our yellow program and the snake issue and all the rest of it, maybe if visitors had something yellow tied to their backpack, maybe that would prevent the baboons from being so eager to grab it. So I just think it's absolutely brilliant. And I also think that potentially, if this works, if it's successful, it could be a really useful spotlight for other villages and other areas, you know, that are potentially having issues with baboons. Then we could be an example that could kind of show how this could work in such a positive way. That's my thoughts.
Thank you very much, Maggie. And you know, certainly, I don't know if this is an urban legend or if there's any truth in this, but there is that story about the 100th monkey syndrome, where there were monkeys on one island that discovered that if they dug in the sand, they would find these potato tubers that they could wash and eat. And after a certain number of monkeys knew that, like a threshold was reached, that information was automatically transmitted to other monkeys on other islands that weren't even connected. Now, that could be urban legend, but still, you never know. Thank you. Stephanie, how about you?
Okay. Yes, I think it could work. I think it would be a pretty long-term process. And to get people to buy in would be difficult. But I think also, by the same token, if one could maybe start a pilot project, especially in the business area, because that's definitely where the biggest problem seems to be, around the shop and the restaurants and where there are visitors. So, okay, I'm already thinking about all the practicalities, but put those aside, I think it's worth pursuing. Yes, I do. Just give it a go. As Maggie says, we have nothing to lose.
Thanks, Stephanie. I think there's a lot of ideas that need fleshing out, you know, and the practical implementation of even a pilot program needs to be thought through really carefully, you know, so that we come up with creative ideas and implement something that's very low cost, that's very low impact, that we could just test in a small way. Claire, how about you? Is this worth continuing?
I think we need, so the conversation when we start talking about doing stuff, practically doing stuff, is a little bit back to front for me. So we start talking about yellow and we could do this and we could do that. We start talking about tactics, whereas for me, the focus should be on what do we want to accomplish? What's a small bite-sized thing that we want to accomplish that everybody can coalesce on? And then we can roll out any number of things we could deploy to try and experiment and test. Does this work? Does this work? Is this helping? Is this taking us backwards? But it's the purpose, it's the outcome that we're seeking, then I think we would be useful to maybe focus the conversation on.
Thank you very much, Claire. And I agree with that. And for any of you who haven't looked at Claire and Stephen's document, I would encourage you to do it. They put an enormous amount of time and effort into it. And to me, it's a really valuable document. I think there's a lot to consider. Okay, Rennie, can I ask for your feedback? Is this a valuable enough process to continue with?
You're not getting Rennie, you're getting Keith Moyer.
Okay, hi, Keith.
We've been around Royals for a good while, and the most remarkable thing with the baboons is the increase in the aggression. And it's not something they're going to unlearn. They've learned it now, and it's going to grow. And I would like to relate an experience with the security situation that we had in Royals when the Royal Security Association was born. And what happened was that the community was very slow to buy into the idea that we needed something like a security association, and that we needed something which would actually change the growing crime situation that we had at the time. And it took a break-in where there was an injury which actually led to a death to turn things around. And the cameras were introduced into our village, and there was a remarkable change. And I feel this learned aggression that our baboons have is eventually going to lead to injuries, probably on the baboon side first, but could well and will probably, if it continues to grow, be on the human side as well. And we need to find innovative ways of fixing this. And it's not going to be little fixes. I so liked the idea that was mentioned in the open letter from Bob Bakery about a collar linking to the GPS system, which would, for the alpha male, not be a very nice thing to have. But if we could teach them to stay out of the village, we're on the right track.
Thanks very much, Keith. Do you think this process is worth continuing, though, just having the conversation and sharing ideas?
Yeah, we're looking at a very small cross-section of the village at the moment.
We are, but you know, it's interesting. We've had 118 people watch the initial video, which and 25 that were on the call. So, you know, that's a fairly large segment of what I assume are mostly villagers. And so I'm thinking there probably will be other people that watch it who would rather not be online. But yes, it is a very small segment. And even if we made a difference with a small segment, would that make any, is it worthwhile continuing, is all I'm saying.
If it's increasing the consciousness, then yeah, great.
Okay, thank you. Di, what are your thoughts? Oh, okay. Di says she had to take a call. She has to agree that the problem is escalating, that we need to implement a program of some sorts. Thanks. Stephen, can I circle back to you?
Yeah, sure. So I think that there's been a few high-profile incidents recently. I mean, I think that what I saw is that there seems to be baboons that are dispersing from Gordon's Bay or Pringle Bay, or that have been chased away by HWS from Pringle Bay. So I mean, there's this spate of incidents that there have been, and I think that there's value in continuing on the program to try to introduce something small scale, potentially in the CBD, where you have the potential for baboon human interaction and them stealing food happening. And I mean, bringing in things like saying that you could issue water pistols, or you could issue some sort of aversion thing along with those with yellow bibs or something like that to the businesses in the CBD, or something that's small and self-contained, and where you can start bringing in these ideas. I mean, I still think there's definitely value for it, and um, trying to address these, I think, the most pressing things that there are, which seem to be the increased incidence of baboons taking food or bags and things from people, and trying to address that immediately. I think that there's real value in this.
In the interest of keeping this video short, I've deleted a whole lot of superfluous conversation, and I'm going to summarize it here. And we discussed whether we needed a separate WhatsApp group. The answer was no. Someone had written to me saying, you know, one of the problems with choosing the color yellow is that there's a lot of yellow in the baboon diet and in our natural fynbos, and so yellow may not be a great color. And Stephen added to that certainly some food bags like ShopRite, for example, come in yellow. So we had a long and inconclusive conversation about what color we may try. So we're still looking for feedback on that. I also discussed the idea that I would welcome all sides of the aisle, everyone, to come and listen to these conversations with kind ears. I'd be happy to talk to Gavin, to anyone that can give us some insight and can dissolve hardened attitudes around our baboons. Claire also shared with us some great ideas that she had about baboon management, which are way beyond the scope of just this simple game to do with pairing stimuli and using a color to teach the baboons that a certain color isn't associated with food. But I've moved those right to the end of this conversation because I'm quite sure that there are other people who would like to hear them, because they certainly were valuable ideas. And then we discussed a pilot program, a small pilot program, and I didn't articulate my ideas around it very well, so I'm just going to summarize them here. Ideally, a small pilot program has to be very low cost, very low risk, something that takes relatively small effort, and that has a measurable outcome. So if we left particular color bags full of non-food related items in readily observable places, can we prove the hypothesis that baboons can learn that bags of a certain color never yield a food reward? Could what's measurable be that they check these bags less frequently until perhaps they no longer check those color bags anymore? In the same way that when Ali and Tom's garbage bin kept being turned over, they put mesh at the bottom, put a stone in it, and the baboons kept coming back and trying it, but less and less frequently, until eventually they no longer try it because they've tried it so many times and learnt that it doesn't yield a result. So if you watched the first video, you'll remember that I said that animals learn progressively, they learn taking small steps, and they learn with repeated exposure to ideas. So what would happen if initially we put out the same bag in the same place day after day until they hopefully have checked it out so many times that they no longer bother to check it? And then we add a second bag alongside it, and sometimes a third or a fourth bag, and we leave those there in different combinations until they no longer even are interested in checking out those bags. Then we take those same bags, and in different groupings from one to whatever, we just move them to different places, and we do that until they no longer check them out in other places either. So once they're no longer checking out those bags, then we switch it up a little, and we start taking those same bags of the chosen color, but now we start moving them to different places and in different quantities until the baboons have checked them out and determined that no matter where they are, in the CBD or maybe at a house, they no longer check them out because they've lost interest. Then we start using different shades and sizes of that particular color bag and putting them in more random places, so that over time they learn that no matter what size, bag or shade of that color it is, no matter how many times they look inside, there is no food reward, so they may as well ignore any bags of that particular color. If we can visibly see that baboons start ignoring these bags, then we can discuss how we might be able to use this learning in other areas and other applications. But that would be my suggestion, to start just a very small pilot scheme with the 11 households and maybe some of the CBD people. And if we discover in doing this that this cannot work, even this very basic shaping and idea of paired stimuli, well, then it's no use taking it further, but we would have lost very little. Thanks, everyone. I look forward to watching your comments, and don't forget to listen to Claire's ideas, which are tacked on at the end of this. Idea of what sort of a thing we could try and accomplish.
I think the things that I kind of put down as that are my top ideas, but again, I haven't heard everybody else's ideas yet. Right. But one is the idea of the businesses in the CBD getting together to escort people to their cars with their bags, so that someone can keep a lookout. People can take food from the shop or the restaurant to their car and not have it taken away from them. That would be one. So the outcome of that would be, there's now an option for people who are concerned or nervous or want to not have their food taken from them in the CBD. Right. The second one is the idea of someone who, everybody in the village, we could start with a small subset, but just marking on a map, the baboons are here, the baboons are here now, the baboons are here now. So we get a view of where they are at any given time. If you're driving home with a boot full of shopping or groceries, you can check to see, oh, they're in my neighborhood, they're outside my house. Or if you're going to go out and do some gardening and you want to know if they're there, or you want to take your dogs out for a walk, you want to know where they are, that kind of idea. And I think that's got quite a few positive possibilities for the future, but we could start very, very small and very manually with that. Yeah. And the last one was, I don't know if any of you have ever seen Planet Earth, the David Attenborough show, where they had it showed the penguins and what they have to go through on a daily basis just to live or just to feed their chick. Or it showed the sea iguanas hatching and having to traverse the horror of the snakes trying to kill them before they could get to the sea. And that understanding and empathy for what these creatures are actually going through. If you take someone like Gavin or someone else who's got experience and can educate, or we try and create some content from his knowledge. I don't think he's only one man, so probably can't talk to every member of the public who comes to Roy Else. But if we can try and distill what he knows into something that can be in people's faces when they arrive here, so that there's never any need for someone to be sitting at a restaurant and have no idea that there's a possibility that a baboon could be outside or maybe inside.